Bones and Bobbins podcast is now on Patreon. Woohoo! Would you like access to bonus episodes, digital extras, exclusive merch, and more? Join us in the Curiosity Shop at patreon.com/Bones and Bobbins.
Your generous support helps make the show happen and will also earn you our very eternal gratitude and entry into our private Patreon-only Facebook group.
It's delightful. You will like it.
It is. It's true.
And a little bit scary because Facebook likes to show me really, really frightening things. And I'm like, now I got to share it.
Yeah, this week has been a pretty banner week as far as questionable life choices that someone has put on the internet.
I would never have imagined covering a mannequin with deer skin.
Yeah, it is some of the weirdest and most disturbing taxidermy I've ever seen, and that includes the pants made of human skin.
Oh, yes.
Because those at least were shaped exactly how they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yikes. In a dusty old shop on a forgotten old street, you'll find two witches with books 3 boxes deep. Next to rusty old needles and faded red thread, you'll come in for yarn, but leave with pigments instead. Whether poisons or patterns, we're always discreet, where creepy and crafty and morbidity meet. Welcome to the Bones and Bobbins podcast. Hello, morbid makers. We are your slightly creepy,
Mildly disconcerting,
somewhat sinister,
delightfully discomposed,
opaquely odd,
merrily morbid,
marvelously misanthropic hosts.
And this is Bones and Bobbins, Season 5, Episode 3, Postage, Plain Courting, Love Victorian Style.
Very, very kinky.
Indeed.
I'm Haley from Red Handled Scissors and the Very Serious Crafts podcast, and I go by she and her.
And I'm Natalie from Uber Dark Designs, an official true crime creative, and my pronouns are she and her.
How are you?
I am pretty good. So I gotta tell you, like normal morning stuff, I am blowing my reading goals out of the water. I'm on book, I think, 7 already this year. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Wow.
I ended up on a delightful site of TikTok, which is basically Midwesterners versus cryptids.
So, usual Friday.
Yeah, so usual Friday. And it cracks me up because it's fairly accurate. But most importantly, and I promise, well, I guess I can't promise, I don't believe that every episode will contain this week's Amish Corner with Natalie, but I think...
I kind of want it to.
I think that I witnessed something that might possibly trump the Amish Death Brigade.
Huh. Really?
Uh-huh. The youngest and I had to leave the house at like 8 o'clock on Saturday, which is pretty early. Saturday mornings we're used to dodging Amish carts because it's usually like farmers market day and stuff. So
right.
Amish being out and about, not anything unusual. We're driving along and come up over a hill, and both of us at the same time are like, is that, It's so, trying to paint the picture. So 2 horses.
Embracing.
Like Clydesdale size. Not normal Amish horse size, but bigger ones.
Yeah.
Towing like a flatbed trailer. But not like a normal flatbed trailer. Like you could build a tiny house on this thing. Huge flatbed trailer with like sheets of wood on it. Standing on top of the wood. Amish dude. Because somebody has to steer the horses. And they're clipping along. And I'm like, are you kidding me with this daredevil surfing shit? What? And then, like, we get around the corner and there's two more. And it was super windy and like 11 degrees out. One of them had two Amish guys on. One of the Amish guy with the reins of the horses in his hand wasn't even looking where he was going. He was looking behind him because I think he was trying to like not have the wind in his face. But these horses were like clipping along and they're going up and down hills. I'm like, I would have sat. I don't know how these guys were like standing on top of this shit, just like doop-a-doo, like whipping down the hill on top of stacks of wood on a giant trailer that horses were pulling. Like it. And I respect them, so it took everything in me to not snap a fucking photo, let alone take any video. Because they don't like that. And I just like, oh, no one's gonna believe this, but oh my god, like what?
Alright, so hear me out on this. I'm pretty sure I could do that. Do you know why?
Gymnastics?
Nope. The New York City subway.
That is true.
Because
I have been on the subway, yes, but there's handles there.
Yeah. But I can't reach them.
Oh, that's true.
If I'm, well, depending on where I am on the train, and if I'm near a pole. But there were significant, like, most rush hours, I am not tall enough to reach the center poles.
Yeah.
And I definitely just stood there with my knees not locked, and you just do.
Yeah, I've been on them.
And it is a roller coaster, and they go fast and they stop frequently, and
yeah,
it takes a while to be able to just casually read a book while standing, not touching anything on the subway, but I can do it. And so I think I would like to join them.
I think that, okay, I firmly believe that you could. The one doubt in my mind is that the wind would blow your ass away. Because it's open. I mean, it was wide open. There's no covering whatsoever. And I think like it's the wind and you just be like, swoop.
You're not wrong.
A little Haley paper airplane flying through the air. But it was, yeah. That's and earlier in the week we saw like somebody just, you could tell they had a day. They hitched their Amish buggy horses up to the cart corral at the Aldi. And I was like, that's pretty funny. Like, but nothing, it's not, surfing on
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm thinking they were obviously it was like stuff to build a house, but that was a lot of shock and awe.
To a barn raising.
Right? God, they must have some extraordinarily solid centers of gravity. Like,
Well, and again, this is where I think I could do it, because my center of gravity is so low.
Yeah, but you're also, like tiny.
I might be relatively light.
Right.
But
we have to weight you down a bit.
Pretty close to the ground.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it would be interesting and a terrible idea to try.
Which, of course, makes me just want to arrange it now. Because,
Right.
So, yeah, that's this week on Natalie's Amish Corner. A whole new world.
We need a theme song.
Right? It was impressive, though. Like, I've never seen... I mean, we see a lot of Amish. It's not like, and there's like a whole Amish alley where we even know, like, Monday's wash day. I mean, we know, like, we know a lot about the Amish, but I didn't see that shit coming. Certainly not at 8 o'clock in the morning before I had slammed some coffee in my face.
I mean, I guess they gotta get it there somehow.
They do.
But I wasn't expecting, like, raw dogging the
Right.
wood.
It was kind of hot. Like,
Yeah. I was just thinking, I could see a romance novel
right?
involving that. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my god.
I'm going straight to hell.
Yeah, but enjoyably.
Right. So yeah, how are you?
I'm all right.
A tiny bit older.
Yeah, I am slightly older. I had my birthday over the weekend.
Yes.
And I know that my husband gets me because several things happened in succession. One was, while he was making me a layer cake from scratch, both frosting and cake, he came upstairs and brought me a spoonful of frosting in bed.
Oh,
so, exactly. So A+ there.
Yes.
And then, of course, the layer cake.
That was a sexy looking cake.
Yeah, it was. He did a really nice job. We've been watching a lot of Bake Off, and he clearly learned.
I was gonna say that was Bake Off worthy. The little decoration on top was chef's kiss.
Oh yeah, yep. It was for those of you who didn't get my texts. It was a yellow cake with chocolate frosting, and he did this Oreo cookie design, but with multi-height Oreos. It was a whole thing. And it was delicious.
The crumb looked good, and it was a good cake to frosting ratio.
It was so good. I mean, it's still so good because there's still some downstairs, and I'm gonna have it for dinner.
Yeah, you are.
I am. It's true. My current diet of protein shake and cake. That's how I'm living at the moment, and I like it.
You're nourishing. That's all that matters.
Exactly. And so I thought that was good, but then he followed it up with the best birthday present.
Yeah.
He got me German Victorian death art.
That is a keeper.
Yeah. So it's Revelations 2:10. So he got me like fire and brimstone death art.
Yes.
And yeah, it's embroidered and has weirdly burned figures of like angelic figures on it, and has dried flowers, and it's very fragile, but it is fucking cool. And he got it for me at my friend Monique's oddities shop, and I was so excited when I opened it. It's awesome. It's gonna look so good in my study.
Yeah, it was.
But it's also creepy as hell.
In all the right ways. It's pretty perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think it is as far as I can remember, it is my first true piece of time period Victorian death art. Which is kind of impressive given what I like. So that might not be true, but I think it is.
It's amazing and perfect.
Yeah, I guess I have some mourning jewelry, but I don't have any
handcrafted,
yeah, like no hair art, no death art specifically. So anyway, my spouse is awesome and made me a cake and gave me death art.
Yay!
Yeah. So that is what's going on in my life.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice. Now would probably be a good time then for us to take a quick break to thank all of our fantastic Curiosity Shop members over on Patreon and give a very special, totally normal, and not at all creepy welcome shout out to our newest member, Maureen Nickelbine, which I'm hoping I pronounced correctly.
Seems like it ought to be. You're the best, Maureen, and we would totally go explore hidden old graveyards in the woods with you.
Absolutely. And if you are listening and want in on this fun, not only will you get some really great secret surprises, but you will get a huge backlog of Patreon-only episodes. In fact, we're coming up on Patreon episode number 69.
Nice.
That's we're 12. But it is 69. Like, so yeah, there's they're all pretty exclusive stuff that are either extensions of what we talked about in the main week or, whole new topics.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Plenty of bonus stuff for you to binge.
Indeed. And the Facebook group is really fun.
It's true. It is very fun. And only nice people are there, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So join us, and also don't be a dick.
Despite all the weirdness they drop in, there's no drama.
Listen, we all have insomnia.
True.
So, can I tell you about the fucking weird world of Victorian dating?
Please tell me.
Yeah. So, as we have learned through our many, many forays into weird shit what Victorians do, it will probably not come as a surprise to learn that Victorian dating is extremely Victorian.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, to sort of give you the context about the attitudes towards love and relationships at the time that will make the rest of this make sense, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how people were thinking about those things at the time. So, marriages for money and marriages for political alliance purposes were becoming less and less desirable. The family unit was settling more into the shape that we think of today, and society was kind of falling in love with love, in that being in love suddenly became fashionable. And therefore, something called companionate marriages became the primary form of marriage. And those, as opposed to wealth or politics, focused on mutual affection and attraction, and also emphasized emotional closeness. And love became the societally popular ideal when thinking about marriages. And so before this time, that just really wasn't the case. That kind of wasn't what marriages were for, which is not to say that people didn't fall in love, but this was a very solid shift towards love being the most important factor in selecting a partner. And because of this, and because the sort of money and politics was in part removed, I mean, let's be clear that there were still very much social classes and expectations within those. And so when we're talking about this, we are generally speaking talking about people within the same social class as each other who are dating. But because emotional closeness became more important than money or politics, women suddenly had much more say into who they took as partners because they were actually involved. And so this also does go for men as well, and specifically the men that would be the partners, because men have always had a bit more latitude in this area, but it was usually the parents, specifically the fathers, who are the most powerful. So this shifted that power a bit more towards the actual couple who would be potentially in a partnership, which hadn't happened before.
Just mind-boggling.
I know, right? What also happened around this time that hadn't really happened before was the belief that it was better not to marry at all than to marry someone who you weren't in love with. That idea began to take hold, which weirdly also gave way to some people choosing purposefully to remain single because they had not found what they were looking for within a relationship. I thought that was kind of interesting because you often think about sort of the idea of, say, for example, spinsters being women largely that people did not desire to marry, but that wasn't necessarily the case. Sometimes women elected not to marry because they didn't find anybody that suited them.
Good on them.
Well, yeah, and that really hadn't happened before because the actual couple getting married had really never been in the proverbial driver's seat before.
Yeah.
And since parents were no longer the primary way for couples to join together, we suddenly had other kinds of matchmaking in the mix, which also had never existed before. So it still remained true that parents or family members frequently introduced potential couples, but mutual friends also started to become ways of introduction, along with neighbors. And also, it became possible to meet someone at social events. And there were even marriage-specific personal ads in newspapers, which allowed people in sort of the same class, but maybe different social circles, to meet where they otherwise wouldn't. All of a sudden, it went from your parents telling you who to marry to, like, getting set up by your best friend. So,
or Victorian's version of Craigslist misconnections.
Well, actually, there are two very different kinds of personals ads, and one was like specifically looking for marriage, often written by women with what they were looking for in a partner. And it came in and out of fashion. It became frowned upon and not frowned upon and then frowned upon again. But it hadn't even been an option before, and so you could cast a much wider net.
Yeah.
Once you did meet a person that you were interested in, courtships themselves were usually short, so 9 months or less often, sometimes just a couple of months. And engagements, however, were often years long.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah, and that was especially true for working class couples because they needed to save money to get married. And so, like, once you have courted and found your person, the next best thing to being married is being engaged because you are very much spoken for. Like, that is sort of unbreakable in a similar way to marriage. Even if you were engaged for quite some time, there was the symbolism of the closeness of that relationship that backed your future.
I guess I didn't think of the financial factor, just in that like they weren't having the big lavish craziness that we have. So I guess I was thinking wouldn't be that as expensive.
Well, I think that it's like different kinds of expenses.
Oh,
So,
yeah, because then you got to
be,
have the house and start
yeah,
popping out kids and.
yep, and because the family unit was becoming what we think of today as like parents and children, you needed to set up an entire household because ideally you weren't going to be living with one of your parents. You were going to be like, you needed to have a house or an apartment, and you needed to have like linens, and because things weren't disposable then, these were durable goods and they were expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's why there are locks on old dresser drawers, because all of those things were worth quite a lot of money. And so it makes sense that you would have to set up, like, you would have to take the time to acquire the things that you would need, because you would need to do that before you moved in. Otherwise, you wouldn't have your day-to-day necessities.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I also think that longer engagements for the wealthier classes were, and this is just sort of a guess of mine from reading through the articles and books that I read through, but it seems like maybe that was a statement of sort of the opposite of a shotgun wedding. Like you didn't have to get married. You were choosing to get married, and things were above board. So that's my guess. I know that working class couples, the engagement was long for financial reasons, but my guess is that it was also long for wealthier folks because of the appearances of the thing. All right. So, interestingly, as we know, Victorian society was filled with rules and manners and expectations, and sort of through different classes of wealth or lack of wealth, there were 3 pretty common gifts that happened in most structures, although the quality and expense of those gifts could vary wildly. And some form of the following 3 things almost certainly existed as gifts between engaged couples. So, engagement rings, because engagement rings were coming into fashion at this point. And then there was generally a picture or a photograph of each other or of the couple together. and also exchanged were locks of hair, presented in various formats depending on how wealthy you were.
Oh.
And so
So there were those 3 gifts were the most, were usually found within the structure of Victorian marriage. And of course, there were also so many letters because mail in large cities like London could have mail delivered up to 7 times a day, which is just wild. But Natalie will tell you all about that in a bit.
Yes.
And so if you were gonna try to date during Victorian times, you were gonna need some tools to do that. So
That would have
and I
sucked.
think,
That's a lot of work. We need tools.
well, I mean, tools and codes.
Also, is it wrong that as soon as you said that a lock of hair is a common gift, I'm like, yeah, because if he tries to back out, you got his hair.
I hadn't thought of that, but also,
A curse upon you.
Yep, just sneaking off into that little cabin in the forest to see the woman that nobody talks about.
Right. Tell me no.
Yeah, so I think that you will tell us probably more about these when you tell us about letters.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first tools and most common tools were manuals and templates that existed to help couples more closely follow the manners for specific situations. Often this was part of letter writing, but sometimes it was just part of the intricate social dance that was all of the rules of Victorian society. So, for example, you might have a dating manual that would tell you the next steps if, say, you've only met once and it was a Wednesday and a bird flew over your head as you knocked on the door. I mean, that is not a real example, but
It could be.
it's that kind of specificity.
Yeah.
So, another very common tool that was used were fans. Fans like the handheld folding fans that you think of when you think of, women swooning and fanning themselves. Sending fan signals at balls or dances is kind of funny. The fan manufacturers themselves often produced pamphlets with sort of
Cheat codes.
shorthand, for the fan code. And so I'm sure that there were variations, because of course there were.
Yeah.
But here are some examples of fan codes that I found. If you were carrying a fan in your left hand with the fan open, it meant, come and talk to me. If you were fanning slowly, it meant, I'm married. If you were fanning quickly, it meant, I am engaged, which I think is hilarious. And if you opened the fan and then shut it, it meant you are cruel, which...
Like the person holding the fan is cruel, or you're throwing shade with your fan?
You're throwing shade with the fan.
Okay.
So it's directed at someone.
Woo!
Yeah. And the phrase, you are cruel, comes up in almost all of these codes. And so I think it must just be like the Victorian equivalent of you're a dick.
I kind of like that.
Because nothing actually cruel seems to be happening in any of the instances when you might use this. So I think that you're so cruel is just like, you're an asshole.
How very dare you?
Exactly. And so, in addition to fan code, there is also handkerchief code,
Which
Oh.
I
think is probably the predecessor to the LGBTQIA handkerchief codes that were sort of used in the infancy of like gay bar culture.
Yeah, I covered it.
Yeah, exactly. But instead of using colors, it was using motions. And so handkerchiefs could be used like fans at a ball, or to send someone a message across a room, or like at a dinner table. There were lots of ways to be real sneaky about it. I have a few examples of the handkerchief code and its meaning. So if you drew a handkerchief across your lips, you were desirous of an acquaintance. Exactly. If you were twirling it in both hands, you were indifferent.
Oh, okay.
If you dropped it, it meant we will be friends. And I don't know what that means.
Okay.
We will be friends, or we will be friends. Unclear. If you were twirling it in your left hand, it meant I wish to be rid of you.
Oh.
As I was thinking of all of these rules, I was thinking about how terribly confusing it would be to be autistic during this time.
Right.
because
All I do is flail and gesture and mess with things with my hands and just generally fidget with whatever is nearby. And I would be sending just novels.
But at the same time, it would be helpful for you because you would absolutely know what social cue they were throwing out.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's completely true. But since most of my stimming, and I think most autistic people's stimming in general, isn't a consciously done act,
Right.
you would just be like, it would sort of be like, you know how those ghost boxes that scan radio frequencies?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that it would just be me doing that, and then every once in a while it would stop and say indifferent. I don't even know. So I mean, similarly with fans, like none of this would go well for me, is all I'm saying.
I would be walking around with like all the freaking manuals in my hand trying to figure out what the right it would, yeah, I would, they'd be like, okay, she can't even keep her signal straight, so we're gonna leave her be.
Yep. I mean, I would say something deeply dirty to the wrong person.
Right?
I'm sure of it. But, or I would do it on purpose once people got used to me just sort of ghost boxing. Just to fuck with people. But the next code is one we have already covered, which is the language of flowers.
Yes.
we covered
That descent into madness in detail in season 1, episode 12, that's called Flowers, but Not in the Attic. And I've included a link to that in the show notes. The Americans got in on this whole Victorian flirting thing with items that I'm not sure if you'll talk more about them later, but flirtation cards.
No,
Which,
I do not cover those at a cutoff somewhere, and I refrained from diving into those.
cool. So flirtation cards were also known as escort cards or acquaintance cards. And not escort like that.
I was gonna say, all right, just put it out there.
No, I mean, escorts used to be, actual people escorting you back in the day.
Yeah.
But I really want to bring these back. So, because Americans tended to be a bit more direct than our British counterparts, flirtation cards existed, and they were essentially pre-printed papers that were designed to be icebreakers. A few examples of what these might say are, the very straightforward but very proper, "I very much desire to make your acquaintance." And then there is the somewhat risque, "May I see you home?"
Oh, hey now.
Because, if you want to walk your lady back to her house. And some of them are just downright just filthy. And, for example, "Not married and out for a good time."
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. And these cards were sometimes illustrated, and they were sort of a parody of formal calling cards. And they were also a sneaky way to dodge chaperones, because you could easily palm them and hide them behind fans, or hide them in various bits of lace and under ribbons. So they could be a very sneaky, way to pass a note. And then we have the final form of flirting that I'm going to cover, which is classified ads that were beyond the straightforward marriage ads that I talked about at the beginning.
Yes.
I found some examples of these from Mental Floss, and at some point I might just have to do a deep dive into Victorian classified ads on the old newspapers.com, because these are delightful.
I think I saw the same Mental Floss. Are these coded ones? Because there was coded ones too.
They aren't coded.
Okay.
Well, they aren't not coded, but they're not truly coded.
Okay.
So one example of these ads was CAD, and I am unclear if that is calling someone a cad.
Oh, okay.
Or if those are initials. It could go either way. It kind of works both ways. Says, "Utterly miserable and brokenhearted. I must see you, darling. Please write and fix time and place at all risk. Can pass house if necessary unseen in close carriage." So.
All right.
Somebody wanted to get up to some desperate no good. And then there was another example that said, "Kitten, I hope you are happy. I am most miserable. Do write to our house before Wednesday next. I cannot bear a year. Pray let me see you for old love, which is still stronger."
Okay, with the kitten.
So yeah, somebody was going away for a year. Maybe he was going off to the army or something.
Or jail, you never know.
Or she was going off to tour the continent. Who knows? And then there are sort of the more flowery, dramatic versions. And this one is addressed to Always at 11. "Dearest, I have obeyed your letter. Have mercy, you are breaking my heart. Never to see you, never to hear, save to bid me not come. For God's sake, dear love, end this one way or the other. I cannot bear it. You are too cruel."
Ooh.
Yeah. So I have no idea if this was written man to woman, woman to man, woman to woman.
I was gonna say it could be any of them.
Because it could literally be any. But that's sort of the other flavor of ads that were certainly romantic, but not straightforwardly looking for a date with a specific kind of person.
Yeah, I stumbled across there was like a whole like freaking cryptic language within the ads. I was like, my gosh. I'm both.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there are here too.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, I'm sure that there are some mixed into even these examples. But there might be a deeper dive on this in an upcoming episode because fascinating.
There's
and also
so
I
much
look
more.
Through all the old newspapers.
Right? Oh, yes.
Yep.
I would be a spinster just because I couldn't keep the shit straight. Like,
oh my god. I would just need cheat sheets written on the insides of my fans.
Or I would just stand there with a sign.
Yeah. Although I like codes and I like hierarchies and order, so it's possible that I would have thrived.
I love it. Like, I think it is amazing, but I think that I would kind of suck at it. Also, I'm not typically good at the sneak snocking. I'm kind of a loud. Here I am.
I can do both, I think. Like, I am straightforward when it makes sense, but it's kind of fun to be sneaky sometimes.
I think I would have to put in my head that I was, like, playing a role. And then I would be able to handle it. Like.
And, I mean, that kind of makes it fun.
It does. Like, that kind of stuff, I am so here for, and I wish that we still did stuff like that.
I mean, we kind of do. We just do it on the internet. Or, you know, with clothing and different styles. And yeah, it's interesting. I think that you can probably look back through most of history and find what would recognizably be a code meant to signal to other people like you.
Yeah.
Just broadly. Like, even if you were just going with, like, the mods and the rockers. Or, I mean, mall goths. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, like, you send out those signals. This was just a much subtler version. Although I'm not sure that it would have been subtle if every woman at a ball was doing it at the same time.
Right? And you would almost have to lock eyes with the person that you meant to direct it to. Or they would.
I think that you do. I think that you at least lock eyes and then look away, if not, or maintain eye contact. But you certainly would need to, man, you could so easily have someone get the completely wrong idea because they thought you were looking at them. And heaven forbid if you needed glasses and that wasn't an option.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking my astigmatism causing me to see double marquesses across the room.
I mean, they all wore the same thing, so as a fellow astigmatism gal, I would be in the same.
And especially in candlelight.
Oh, yeah. That's where I would just have a sign. I can't see you.
Sorry.
If interested, inquire within. You're like, I don't know.
Yeah, gonna have to come talk with me.
Yeah, you're gonna have to.
Sorry.
You know, leave me a letter underneath the.
Say, send me a note. Ask my chaperone to be added to my dance card. Dance cards were also another interesting
thing. But those were slightly earlier, I think.
I think so too.
I mean, the height of them. I think they still existed through like the 40s, the 1940s. But I think that they were more of a late 1700, early 1800s thing, but I could be misremembering that. But yeah, so that is Victorian dating and flirting, and is by no means a comprehensive look at any of those things, because you could write literal books on every single aspect of it, because human beings, they like to make it real complicated.
Right?
Yeah.
So, once upon a time, thanks to The Truth About Cats and Dogs, which is a movie that youngsters listening probably have no idea, and you should go watch it immediately. I once stumbled upon a genre of books that I never expected to enjoy as much as I did. It began with Simone de Beauvoir's letters to Nelson Algren, because the library didn't have a copy of her letters to Sartre, which is what is specifically mentioned in the movie.
Right.
But I devoured it, and then hunted down her letters to Sartre and scarfed those up just as quickly. And then I set my sights on Kafka's letters to his muse, Milena Jasenska, and from there, like, the rabbit hole continued.
Yep, because then you get Anais Nin,
yes, God, I love
just
her.
all of the things.
Right.
I love it, because it's like gossip.
Oh, it's so, yes, it's like it's amazing.
Except not toxic, and I just get to be the voyeur of.
Because,
I mean, it might have been toxic, but I'm not being toxic about it.
True. You're not perpetuating the toxicity.
There we go.
Because I am old enough to know what it was like to have to mail letters to those who lived far away before emails were like a thing. And while I am forever grateful for the technology that connects us all so very quickly now, I do believe that there's like still a joy in that, but I also feel just a bit bad to like all those youngsters listening that never experienced the joy of pulling an envelope out of the mailbox with your friend's handwriting on it. And there were definitely like doodles and stickers on the outside. Like, and that was all before you even opened it. And then just unfolding pages of notebook paper filled with everything from like your most intimate secrets to what kind of pizza they had Saturday at Tiffany's sleepover. Or even more thrilling if you got one from somebody that you were crushing on.
Yeah. Do teenagers write each other notes anymore?
I don't think so. I think they just
actual
text.
Physical notes?
I don't think they do.
Oh, wait. I teach them. I could ask.
Yes, ask them. I mean, I can ask my offspring, but I don't think they do.
I will ask them in class and see
if
that is still a thing.
These sheets of paper would be read and reread and then carefully added to the shoebox full of letters.
Oh, I have my shoebox still.
Yeah, and ticket stubs and strips of like photo booth photos and like other like tangible trinkets that represent memories before we could photograph everything and post it online. Like, it was these things that like kept that memory in there. And like, we talk about the boldness that anonymity gives people online.
Yeah.
I think that there was a bravery that was given to that notebook paper and that envelope and the stamp that you snuck from your parents' desk. I know, because, you wrote it and you sent it off, and then, like, you couldn't take it back. You didn't know when they would receive it for sure. It just, like, it was out there then.
Yeah, and if they didn't say anything, you would never know if either it got lost or if they just didn't like you or if they were too scared to talk. Like, yee.
Right. And like, no matter who they were from or how mundane or racy the contents were, they represented like a physical piece of affection that just doesn't have an equivalent now. And that breaks my heart a little bit because letter writing was an art form that goes back, like, believe it or not, like thousands of years. And there's just something about that effort where, like, it was almost like you were writing in your journal, but to your best friend. Like, there's just nothing that really compares to it now.
Oh, yeah, and you would hand it over to your other best friends to read the notes, like you would swap them out. Like, it was a whole thing.
Yep. And when it comes to the art form, specifically of love letters, you know that Victorians had that shit on lockdown. And
oh my God.
Today, I'm going to talk about Victorian love letters.
Hell yes, you are.
So, during the Victorian era, letter writing played a pivotal role in, pretty much like everything. It was the primary mode of communication for all things: birth, deaths, the latest gossip, all delivered via letter or newsletter if you watch Bridgerton. But this was particularly so in romantic relationships for several reasons, and some of which still kind of hold true today. First and foremost, it is always easier to write than it is to look somebody in the eye and speak your innermost thoughts, especially when it comes to love. And letters give you time to focus on each thought, each word, before that entire message is then sent off. And that kind of also ties in with, like, intimacy and connection. In addition to having time to properly convey your thoughts and emotions, it allowed
you're sending the full thing off with no room for reaction.
Right. It allows you to kind of foster a bond in a time where, like, actual physical proximity was often limited due to societal rules, geographical distance, and, like, other constraints. There's just not that that frequency of sight. And finally, in an era characterized by such strict societal norms and expectations, letter writing offered a private and discreet means of communication for lovers to express their feelings away from the prying eyes and ears of society, again, allowing individuals to communicate more openly and authentically and share intimate thoughts and emotions that they might otherwise be hesitant to express in public or in person. You know what? Instead of taking my word for it, we can turn to the 1880 treatise, A Manual of Correspondence, showing the correct structure, composition, punctuation, formalities, and use of the various kinds of letters, notes, and cards, authored by J. Willis Westlake, A.M., professor of English literature in the State Normal School, Millersville, Pennsylvania. And according to this delightful work...
Wow.
Right, isn't that amazing? There's one that's even longer coming up. According to this delightful work, AM in this instance refers to Master of Arts. So let me... Oop, I lost my place for a second. Get to his words. Importance. As letter writing is the most generally practiced, so it also is it the most important, practically considered of all kinds of composition. This will more fully appear from the following considerations. 1. Letter writing is indispensable in business. All persons have business of some kind to transact, and much of it must be done by means of letters. To be able to write a good letter is greatly to a person's advantage in any occupation. Many good situations are obtained by teachers, clerks, and others on account of this ability, and quite as many are lost for the want of it. 2. It is a social obligation. We are naturally social beings, and pleasure, interest, and duty equally demand that our friendships and other social ties should be maintained and strengthened. In many cases, this can be done only by the means of letters. No one would willingly lose out of his life the joy of receiving letters from absent friends, nor withhold from others the same exquisite pleasure. It may be stated also that a person's societal, intellectual, and moral culture are indicated in his letters as plainly as in his manners, dress, and conversation, and it is a great a violation of propriety to send an awkward, careless, badly written letter as it is to appear in the company of refined people with swaggering gait, soiled linen, and unkempt hair. 3. It gives intellectual culture. Letter writing is one of the most practical and interesting exercises in English composition, one that is suitable for persons of all grades, from the child just learning to write to the man of highest attainments. It affords exercise in penmanship, spelling, grammar, diction, invention, in short, in all the elements of composition, and gives ease, grace, and vivacity of style. Many who have become distinguished in other kinds of writing have acquired much of their power and fluency of expression by their practice of writing letters. Of these, Robert Burns is a notable example. In fact, the letters of distinguished men and women form a distinct and important department of literature, and some who are recognized as standard authors would long ago have been forgotten but for their admirable correspondences. Of the latter, it is sufficient to mention Madame de Servigne, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, and Horace Walpole.
Wow.
I love it. But to that last point, Victorian letters do give a whole other glimpse into the lives of that time, and there are some famous pairings of whose correspondences have had a significant impact, like you said, on culture and on literature.
Right.
And in mentioning them, we absolutely need to begin with Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. The love letters,
Clearly.
clearly, the love letters exchanged between them offer a glimpse into the personal lives of one of the most influential royal couples in history. And their correspondence reveals like a deep and abiding love that transcended their role as monarchs. And as you know, Victoria's grief over Albert's death profoundly impacted her to the point where it had a significant influence on Victorian mourning customs and the concepts of enduring love in general. Like, they were the poster people for love at that point. So next up would have to be Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Theirs are one of the most well-known examples of Victorian love letters. Both of them poets. Their letters exchanged during their courtship and early marriage are filled with passion, admiration, and devotion. Elizabeth's sonnets from the Portuguese written for Robert are considered some of the most beautiful love poems in English literature. And their love story and letters have inspired countless romantic tales and continue to captivate readers today. Sadly, not all famous love letters had such happy endings, though. The love letters exchanged between poet John Keats and his muse Fanny Brawne offer a poignant portrayal of unrequited love and longing. Keats' letters to Brawne are infused with his poetic sensibility and express his profound emotions despite their separation, and their tragic love story has inspired numerous poems, novels, and films, including the biographical film Bright Star.
Yeah.
Last, and absolutely not least, are poor Oscar Wilde and Lord Alfred Douglas. The love letters between Irish playwright Oscar Wilde and Lord Alfred Douglas, also known as Bosie, provide insight into a, tumultuous and definitely scandalous love affair that ultimately led to Wilde's downfall. Their letters are filled with passionate declarations and witty exchanges, and also shed a light on the challenges faced by LGBTQ plus individuals during the Victorian era and the societal attitudes toward homosexuality. I really want to cover their entire relationship in an episode someday. But I feel the need to at least give you one sampling. And you can find the letters it's a book called Oscar Wilde, A Life in Letters. Link is in the show notes. The link is also in the show notes for that wonderful how-to guide on literature as well, so you can read it. It's actually very fun. January of 1893, Wilde writes, "My own boy, your sonnet is quite lovely, and it is a marvel that those red rose-leaf lips of yours should be made no less for the madness of music and song than for the madness of kissing. Your slim gilt soul walks between passion and poetry. I know Hyacinthus, who Apollo loved so madly, was you in Greek days. Why are you alone in London, and when do you go to Salisbury? Do go there to cool your hands in the grey twilight of Gothic things, and come here whenever you like. It is a lovely place and lacks only you, but go to Salisbury first. Always, with undying love, yours, Oscar."
Oh,
Right? Just,
it's heartbreaking.
it really is. And they absolutely emphasize the tragic need for one of my favorite things about the Victorians, and that would be secret codes.
Yeah.
Because Victorians got codes for everything. And it's amazing and fun, but it's also very important to note the sheer bullshit that they had to be used for safety in many cases versus just for fun. And even nowadays, like, it's still... Grr. Before I get into codes, though, I'm going to cover the letter writing rules.
Mm-hmm.
Because Victorians love rules, I think, almost more than they love secret codes. So, form and... Salutations and endearments. Victorian letters, in general, often begin with formal salutations such as "my dearest," "my beloved," or "my darling." If it was an invitation to any social function, it was always addressed solely to the woman of the house. Polite introductions are then given. Writers typically introduce themselves and their intentions with polite phrases, acknowledging the recipient's social status and familiar relationships, especially if a recipient's family might scrutinize the correspondence. It's a letter from the lady of the house to, like, a dressmaker or a shopkeeper. The writer would refer to herself in the third person, like, "Mrs. Cumberbatch requires that you complete the dress she ordered by Thursday the 5th. Which is weird, but okay. I'm guessing that's to sound like you have an assistant, but most assistants actually probably didn't do a lot in the way of reading and writing.
Well, I assumed it was just to avoid any confusion. Like, you knew exactly what project or item you were talking about and for whom immediately. I don't know.
That makes sense.
I have no idea, just a guess.
It's a good guess. Body of letter. The body of the letter would typically consist of multiple paragraphs. Each paragraph was dedicated to a specific topic or emotion. Writers often expressed their feelings, shared experiences, or conveyed their hopes and dreams for the future, like, "Oh, I do so hope it will be an early spring." That's their "how's the weather," I guess, small talk. Closing remarks. Victorian love letters often concluded with expressions of love and devotion, followed by formal farewells and wishes. And letters in general were closed with the word "yours," following by endearing terms of affection: "yours ever," "yours truly," "yours affectionately." Occasionally, somebody would shake it up and add a "with all my love" or "forever yours."
Ooh.
And when it came to the signature at the end of the letter, writers would sign their full name if it was 3 names or less. If it was more than 3 names, they would use their initials. Sometimes they added another endearing term like, "your devoted lover" or "your faithful friend." Like, they were really keen on the word "your," which is a little possessive, but
I wonder if it's related to the how in certain areas of England they refer to especially close relationships or familial connections as like our Lee or our Fred.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if that is sort of the flip side of that. I don't know.
That would track. So language and style. Victorians were fancy and poetic as fuck. Like, letters of that time are characterized by use of, like, just an elaborate vocabulary, flowery metaphors, and a ton of romantic imagery to convey deep emotions. Writers frequently reference classical literature, poetry, romantic tales in their letters to express their own feelings and sentiments. Sometimes it was done to express, like, hey, I'm a smarty pants and I've read this. I'm educated. And other times it was like, I don't know how to write the fluffy things. This person does. Take his words. And like, pretty much all things Victorian, letters adhered to the strict etiquette and decorum of the time. Words and phrasing were very carefully selected to maintain propriety and respectability, especially when addressing somebody who was of a higher social standing.
Mm-hmm.
Love letters definitely had common themes and motifs. The first one being devotion. They frequently expressed deep devotion and commitment to the recipient, with writers proclaiming their unwavering love and dedication in heartfelt and poetic language. Like, they laid it on strong and thick. Then there was the longing and yearning. Many conveyed a sense of longing and yearning for the beloved, followed by the desire to be reunited and share intimate moments together. With varying degrees of intimacy. And then there's these societal constraints. Writers often alluded to the societal constraints and expectations that govern the relationship, acknowledging the challenge that they faced, and expressing their love openly and freely. And then hope and optimism, because, you know what? Despite all the obstacles, Victorian lovers, they were hopeful. They were hopeful and optimistic for the future, and eagerly anticipating the day when they could be together and build a life of...
You kind of have to be.
Right. Like, yeah, seriously. More rules. Okay, so we know words and structures was used. But that's not all. Of course not. There is the paper quality. It was customary to use high-quality paper for writing letters, especially for formal correspondence, or letters to individuals, again, of higher social standing. The paper was typically thicker, smoother, and more durable. Size. Letters were commonly written on standard size paper, which is much smaller. It's stationary size, not like what we think of as like notebook paper. And that varied a little bit depending on the preferences of the writer and the availability of the stationery. Some individuals prefer paper with watermarks. Those were super fancy. They added a touch of elegance and sophistication. The strictest rule regarding paper comes to mourning stationery, wherein the paper and the envelopes were trimmed in black. The thickness of that trim was dependent on the level of bereavement. And the level could mean, like, for example, the death of a child is going to be a thicker border than the death of a cousin. And additionally, then, it could start out thicker because you're deeply in bereavement, and then become thin out over time.
Oh, like as the mourning period progressed?
Right. Black borders may also be used on letters announcing an execution, but that's like a whole nother episode.
I did not see that coming.
Right? Ink. Color, black. Black was the most commonly used color for writing letters during the Victorian era, for a variety of reasons. Basically, it's not like there was a whole lot of other options, but it also just was the most clear and legible contrast against the white, or sometimes like cream colored paper.
Sure.
The ink must be of high quality to ensure smooth and consistent writing. Ink that was too thin or watery would result in smudging or blotting, detracting from the overall presentation of the letter. Consistency. Writers often preferred ink that dried quickly to prevent smudging and ensure the letter remained neat and presentable. Penmanship. Writers took all kinds of care in their penmanship when using ink. As neat and legible handwriting was highly valued during this time, calligraphy and cursive scripts were commonly used for formal correspondences, and additionally, codes were sometimes hidden within the flourishes of these cursive letters.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, but ultimately, they had to take great care, because if any mistake of any kind was made, one did not cross it out and continue. Nope, you started that shit all over again.
Huh.
So don't write when angry. Sealing wax and seals. Some individuals use sealing wax and decorative seals to close and secure their letters. Sealing wax was melted and dripped onto the folded edge of the letter before being stamped with a seal. Of course, the seals also had rules as well. If you were not of nobility, initials or a very simple design was used. Family crests were only to be used by the man of the house, period. And if you were in mourning, you guessed it, you must use black wax to seal.
Fair.
Fair.
Very goth.
So we've got the writing, we got how we're doing it, we got our letters all sealed and ready. Next comes addressing. Envelopes were addressed with the recipient's full name, followed by their street address, city, and any applicable postal codes or districts. The sender's return address was typically written on the back flap of the envelope. It is important to note that it was customary for recipients to respond promptly to letters, acknowledging receipt and expressing gratitude for the sender's communication. And reciprocity in letter writing was valued, with individuals expected to maintain that ongoing correspondence and exchange letters regularly with friends, family, and acquaintances. In fact, the 1741 book, Letters Written to and for Particular Friends on the Most Important Occasions, directing not only the requisite style and forms to be observed in writing familiar letters, but how to think and act justly and prudently in the common concerns of human life, by Samuel Richardson.
Hot damn.
It's my favorite. I love it so much.
I'm impressed.
It features quite the exchanges between family that have gone too long without writing. They get positively catty. Do not worry, I found the entire OG version readable online, and the link is in the show notes. And I'm telling you,
I'm so excited.
Oh my god, like it is this seriously. There's one where this guy like reads his sister to filth, like basically that he needs to explain to his mother-in-law that she is not a horrible woman because she has not responded to this letter in time. And
man, that's poking a bear. Don't do that.
Right? Like, bitch, you better write. My mother-in-law's breathing down my neck. He's like, I'm defending you. Like, wow, how late was that fucking letter?
Right?
Whew. So letters were then delivered by hand through postal services or by private couriers, depending on the sender's location and social status and kind of where we were in the time period. Now, postage, the penny black is the world's first postage stamp. And it was introduced on May 6, 1840. And it made it much cheaper to send post and make basically sending letters available to the masses who were unable to afford it previously.
Did you say 1840?
Yeah.
My house is only 8 years older than that. Or younger than that. That's so weird. I would have thought it would be much earlier.
No. The design was based on a portrait of Queen Victoria at the age of 15, and this image was used for her entire reign. And this brings us to our first fun use of Victorian letter coding, stamps. Also called stamp language or philatelic, right? Philatelic code.
Ooh.
So basic principles. The secret code of stamp placement relied on the positioning of the stamps on the envelope to convey different meanings or messages. Each corner of the envelope represented a different category of sentiment or message, and the placement of the stamp in a particular corner indicated its message. Top left, some of the and again, like every other code system that we've talked about specifically from the Victorian era, things are probably regionally and they probably change. But sure. The ones that I have are the top left corner. Placing the stamp in the top left corner of the envelope was typically associated with romantic or sentimental messages. It symbolized affection, love, or a fond farewell. The top right corner was often associated with more formal or business-related messages, which I find interesting because that's where the stamps go now. Placing the stamp in this corner conveyed professionalism, respect, or a serious tone. Bottom left corner, placing the stamp there was sometimes associated with personal or confidential messages, which, I mean, if that's commonly known, man, I'd be stealing that letter.
Right?
It's broadcasting that.
That's an awful lot of trust in people's ability to not, or to have self-control.
Right? And it could convey intimacy, secrecy, or private matter. Bottom right corner was often associated with social or casual messages. So putting a stamp there conveyed like informality, friendship, or a casual, hey, what's the tea? Additional symbols and codes. So in addition to the placement of the stamp, individuals could also use other symbols or markings to further convey meaning. For example, drawing a line through the stamp could indicate a rejection, or a line through the stamp could indicate or a refusal of the message. While placing multiple stamps in different corners could convey a combination of sentiments, which... How...
That's like you're splashing out big time on this letter.
Yeah, like I love you, but I'm pissed at you,
enough.
And here's all my money. Like, I don't... That could be... And which order do you go in, then? The secret code of stamp placement was not... It was not super widely known, allegedly, but obviously it was. Or is understood by the general public, and was primarily used among individuals who were familiar with the practice. But it grew more widespread, and it actually... it became global in usage. But interpretation of the secret code is going to vary based on cultural context, personal interpretation, regional variations in stamp placement. Some systems relied on where the stamp was placed on the postcard. Others were concerned only in its orientation and angle. Also, I'm going to tell you right now, I would play the stamp code game, but all my bitches would know that I had a different spot for this is top secret.
Oh.
I would come up with my own code.
Well, yeah. I mean, wouldn't literally everyone who is trying to be sneaky about it?
You would hope.
I feel like.
So the system was remarkably subtle and sophisticated. Messages could be as simple as yes or no, but also as complex as, may I ask for your portrait? Take care, we're being watched. I think you are very ungrateful. My heart is another's, and I have discovered your deceit. In fact, the introduction...
Goddamn!
Right? The introduction page in one how-to booklet from the time, which I have not found a copy of yet, but I will never stop searching, claimed to be able to encode 270,000 message variations.
Holy shit.
Right? Like, that's... Are we going to write a novel?
How's that even possible?
I don't know. Okay, so some of the stamp positionings in meaning, so Upside down, but in the top left corner, I love you. Crosswise on the top left corner, my heart is another's. Center of the envelope at the top, yes. Center of the envelope at the bottom, no. Straight up and down in any position equals goodbye, sweetheart. Upside down. Why would you read it then? If you're saying goodbye, I'm not gonna read your shit. Upside down, top right corner is right no more. At a right angle in the top right corner, do you love me? At a right angle in the top left corner, I hate you.
You better hope you know left from right.
Seriously. Upright top right corner equals I desire your friendship. Upright in line with surname is accept my love. Upside down in line with surname is I'm engaged. At right angle in line with the surname equals I long to see you. Centered on right edge is right immediately. Yeah. So, the secret code of stamp placement was definitely creative, very playful, and also kind of reflected ingenuity and imagination of individuals that were seeking to convey the hidden messages. It got to the point where postcard companies created booklets decoding the placements. And while...
Ooh, new thing to look at while antiquing, or to look for.
Exactly. Now, while the practice is not commonly used today, there are still many military spouses who use some version of it, because it feels like it makes the letters even more special. I just know that it's just a fascinating aspect of Victorian postal history, and
it's complicated like the language of flowers is complicated.
See, what if there's a flower on the stamp? Like, this shit could get real complicated real quick.
I think my brain just short-circuited.
Which brings me to the inside of the letter.
Luckily, Queen Victoria seems to have been the thing on the stamp.
Right? So the inside of the letter often contains secret messages as well. The first one we've totally covered, and that's the floral language. They often use specific flowers to convey hidden messages, which is a practice that I have to say its name again because it makes me happy. It's floriography, or the language of flowers.
It is very delightful.
It is. Each flower carried symbolic significance, allowing writers to express emotions like love, longing, or fidelity without, using words. For example, red roses, you will be shocked to know, symbolize passionate love. Well, forget-me-nots, again shocking, convey remembrance and fidelity.
Sure.
They also used coded phrases, metaphors, and allusions to convey deeper meanings or sentiments. For example, phrases like, you are my sun and stars, conveyed admiration and adoration. I don't think that's all that subtle.
No.
Also, while I carry you in my heart, express enduring love and connection. Again, I'm not seeing the subtlety here, but,
Maybe it's just subtle in that not everybody knew the code?
Yes. The next one is my favorite, I think. It's acrostic poems. So, acrostic poems are popular in Victorian love letters, and what they are is that the first letter of each line spells out a word or a message. Because everything had to be, by paragraph and specifically written, they use that to their advantage. And they also, they often use them to convey their feelings or, a secret message, 3 o'clock, bike racks, be there. Then the secret codes in the handwriting. So some Victorian lovers developed secret codes or symbols within their handwriting to convey hidden messages. So,
that's cool.
For example, they'd write certain words or phrases in a slightly larger or slightly smaller font, underlining just specific letters here and there or words. or incorporating unique penmanship styles to convey like an additional meaning or an emphasis. So like if a word was italicized or something, you know, like, or had even maybe just a little thicker ink on it. And last we have double meanings and puns. Apparently, they like to contain double meanings or playful puns that allowed writers to convey multiple layers of meaning. They like to use wordplay or clever language to express their feelings in a lighthearted or humorous manner while still conveying romantic intentions. I'm not entirely certain what that means.
Could mean anything.
Right? It could be anything. It could be like, I want to feel your manly boat plunge into my love canal. You know, like just anything. So that
I want it to mean that though.
So that is a very abbreviated, believe it or not, and quick, also believe it or not, jawned through all that is Victorian love letters and letters in general, which between just all the different ways that you could.
How many codes did you need to have?
This is what I'm saying. And what if you combine them all together? Like if one stamp placement meant forget everything that is indicated in the letter, this really means you suck. Like, I don't like it.
Except that the actual written letter has the code that says, just kidding, I love you.
Right? And then all of that is negated by the pressed violet that is enclosed. Like,
that is exactly what I was thinking.
Number one, they had to have a lot of time on their hands. And number two, no wonder it took so long for people to write back. They had to pull out 12 different, like, code manuals.
Yeah. I mean, I guess letter writing was primarily the domain of people who were educated and literate. So they were probably also people with significantly more leisure time.
I would have been knitting.
And I mean, there was an awful lot of knitting and embroidery. Wouldn't you kind of rather learn secret codes? And I say this as someone who literally teaches embroidery.
Ooh, but then but then you put the secret codes in the embroidery and the knitting. They're everywhere. It's everywhere. Remember, we covered the knitting codes.
It's very much everywhere.
I do love a secret code. I really do.
I mean, humans broadly love a code.
Yeah. The thing that I find really interesting in the first book that I quoted, the treatise, there's a whole section, and I got real excited because it said classified abbreviations, and I was like, "Ooh, top secret!" And I was like, "No, they just classified them. They just clumped them together."
Oh.
So there's some that are geography, some that are like there's a set of religious ones, set of legal abbreviations, like. Right, but I found it interesting how many of them we still use today. Like OZ for ounces, LB for pounds.
Oh.
Also, the next time you hear somebody fuss for somebody writing Xmas instead of Christmas and say you're taking Christ out of Christmas, blah, blah. Guess what? According to this book, Xmas is the proper abbreviation to Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, because X was Christ.
Oh, there's two different, I don't understand why, but there's two different abbreviations for Jesus. I don't know if it's like pre-cross, post-cross, or exactly how they divvy that up.
And, like Jesus in life, Jesus no longer, like Jesus as the holy part of the Holy Trinity. Man, I don't know.
There's also a section with foreign phrases that is super fun. And there's, some like carte blanche.
RSVP?
No, this is like just actual words.
Oh.
So, or yeah, respondez s'il vous plaît. But like actual words. And there's like a bunch in like French and Latin, and just some are, again, like carte blanche and things that we've adopted. Others I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, or they have like really funny meanings too, and you're like, why would you tell somebody that they're like, oh, there's a French term. Oh, I don't know if it's like homme sans culotte, which would be like a man without pants, but but that means like they use it to mean ragamuffin. Like,
What?
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a, and I know I sound like a giant nerd, but it is such a fun little book. I actually got slightly offended because somebody only gave it 2 stars on Goodreads, and I was like, how very fucking dare you.
Bitch.
Right, exactly. I was like, oh, hell no. Like, how are you giving this shit
fighting words?
Right,
or fighting stars?
Like, how are you giving this shit 2 stars? Get out of here with that shit. It is delightful. It is so fun. Just the name alone earns it 5 stars. I mean, come on.
Right?
It is.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about the pints. Also, I almost forgot. So in the further reading, I've also linked the 3 books that I mentioned, the letters. And then I came across a YouTube page. What are they called? Channel.
Mm-hmm.
They're channels, right? Took a second. Brain. Called Live Letters. And it's apparently these shows that are done. It is a collection of celebrities reading letters. And like the first one that I discovered it was Benedict Cumberbatch reading a letter, who I will listen to read anything. And Taika Waititi is reading too. I'm like, hello with your New Zealand accent. Right. His is hilarious. Mm-hmm. So like Benedict read like a love letter that was just and then like Taika wrote, it was a letter in like, I want to say like the 2000s. It was from somebody who had gotten a ticket, and they were protesting the ticket because the person that wrote the ticket put down instead of putting the date of the actual date on the date of the ticket, they put the driver's birthday down. It is fucking hilarious how this person breaks down all of the steps that would have had to taken for him to be able to actually have obtained that ticket legally. Including like escaping the hospital at being 3 hours old.
That's hilarious. And this sounds like some lockdown pandemic bullshit.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
This whole thing.
There's another, I can't remember the actress, but it is a letter that somebody wrote to the Always people regarding their happy period campaign. Just, again, like this range of, like, there's like an old-timey, oh my god, so it's Peter Capaldi, and I can't remember who the other actor is, but they're reading back and forth. Oh god, he's from, oh gosh, the British Office.
Oh, I'm not gonna know
and
that.
He's also from What We Do in Shadows, so I think. So these are like super old letters from like one army to another, and this like the guy's reading off all his like supposed titles, and Peter, like on me, as I am the the leader of the free world, blah 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 blah, you shall surrender because this is inconvenient. And Peter Capaldi's guy is like, hi, go fuck yourself. Like, literally, kiss my ass. You ain't, like, just amazing. But it is my new favorite YouTube channel, and it is just, like, each little video is, like, just a couple minutes long. It's not very, but it's, each one, every one that I've watched so far has been just wonderful. So I've put the link.
Well, now I need to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I put the link to Benedict's in there, and then I put the link to just the whole YouTube channel in general. And then they have a new, I think in November, they have a new live show coming out.
Oh, cool.
Right. So it's just, and there's, oh my God, she's such a great actress, and I can't remember her name now. She was reading, it's a letter from, so this woman, when her husband died, gave all of the estate, because she couldn't handle the estate, like the money went to I think it was the brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
But it's her letter on what she expects, like how she expects that money to be spent and what she expects out of it. Her list, basically her list of demands. So it's like, also, I will require 3 horses. Also, and then she talks about like 2 carriages and 1 trimmed in gold. And it's funny because every time like she gets also, like it just keeps going down the line. Her list of demands are impressive, and I hope she got every one of them.
Me too.
But yeah, like, just, it's really great. I love letters from the past like that. I love that they're they're unfiltered. You know, like, you can read newspapers, and that whoever writes that, unless it's their actual story that they witnessed and went through, and even then it's only one version of it.
Yeah.
Letters are amazing, and then when you have the exchange of the letters back and forth, and you see both sides of that conversation, it's just, I think it's great. I'm sure that there is an argument that it's, you know, intrusive, and, you know, they didn't, you know, those things were written in private and not, you know, meant to be published, and I understand that, but I'm not listening to that right now.
But still.
But still. Like, yeah. Simone published her own shit. Like, at one point, I think that people, like, I think there was a whole, like, time period, they're like, yeah, well, I'm going to publish this. Which was, like, you know.
Well, yeah.
Way of airing laundry, I suppose. But yeah.
It's like screaming into the void of Reddit.
Right. Because they didn't have...
Am I the asshole?
Exactly. So, that, I think, brings us to, perhaps,
the weekly
worst way
to die. What's yours?
Mine is messing up my codes and pissing somebody's wife or significant other off.
Fair enough.
I can see that happening.
Mine is similar, but it is a fan flirting mishap, and I mean physical mishap. Like, decapitation by fan.
Oh.
Like, something, like, fatal paper cut.
Gotcha. Ooh, yeah. I used to play Katana in Mortal Kombat. She had some really amazing, like, lethal fans.
Finish them. Oh my god.
Fatality. Hey, do you want to be spooky internet friends?
God, I hope so.
You can find us at Bones and Bobbins on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, because I refuse to call it anything other than Twitter, even though we're not on there a whole lot, but, you know, anywhere, basically. And if not, you can just always visit us at bonesandbobbins.com.
That's true. And don't forget to rate and review this podcast, because it pleases the internet gremlins, and that's how we show up in recommendations so that other morbid souls can find us. And just this once... Yes. Just this once, you can feed the gremlins after midnight.
Yes. Preferably of the 4 or 5 star variety would be nice.
Oh yes, only those.
Yes.
Because otherwise, just go away.
Yeah, we're just not for you. We're not for everyone, and we get that. Also,
which is fine. Yep.
I'm hoping that we've grown out of our supposed baby talk from season 1.
The baby talk is me at the end.
That's just...
It's the and don't run with scissors.
But it's a thing. thing. It's not a, it's...
I know it's the thing, but we definitely haven't grown out of it since I for sure do it, and it really annoys somebody.
Pooey on them.
Anyway, sorry.
But if we mess up,
that
you can always
annoys.
tell us. Like, if we get something wrong, we will absolutely issue apologies and beg for forgiveness.
It's true, but I'm not apologizing for sounding like a creepy Victorian child.
Hell no.
Because I look like a creepy Victorian child.
But in a cute way.
Sorry, not sorry.
Like, I'd let you in my house.
But would you?
Yes.
If I showed up in my white lacy nightgown with eyes fully dilated from being in the dark, would you really?
Yeah. I would.
All right.
Like, I'm that person. Like, I'm gonna most likely die from trying to hug something I shouldn't, so... Yeah, I'd let you in. Come on in. You hungry?
I mean, you know what? That is entirely true. You would 100% let me in.
Do you need a hug? Are you cold?
No. I want your soul.
That goes back to the Midwesterners versus cryptids TikTok. Where it's like...
But what if I'm both?
Well, they show, like, most people, when they encounter, like, you know, cryptid, and it's, like, you know, running away, and, you know, if you heard something, no, you didn't, and they're like, Midwesterners, get the fuck off my lawn! Like, it's just not even. So,
or, do you need any help?
Yeah. You good there?
Yep.
You're
doing all right?
Do you need something? All right. Tell your folks I says hi. Watch out for the...
Exactly.
Watch out for the knot, dear.
Oh my god. Oh boy. Yep,
on that note,
that is, yeah.
Let us leave you with some advice that you should never forget. Lock your doors.
And don't run with scissors.
Be careful how you place the stamps on your next letter.
And also, you know, let a creepy Victorian child in your house. It's fine.
It's fine. They just need love too.
Yeah. It's not like they're going to eat you out of house and home. Speaking of Midwestern-isms. Anyway. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Each episode of the Bones and Bobbins podcast is written and researched by Haley Pearson Cox and Natalie Hoyce. Our music was composed by Loyalty Freak Music. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bones and Bobbins. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, or check us out wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts so you won't miss a minute of our strange and creepy content.